Welcome, the chosen one. The most dangerous person is never the loudest one. It is the one who quietly reaches a point where fear, temptation, and manipulation no longer work. That is the day every hidden empire starts looking over its shoulder. History has proven something fascinating. Every organization built on influence, secrecy, or control survives by understanding how ordinary people think. They study patterns, they predict reactions, they rely on one simple assumption that almost everyone can be pressured, distracted, flattered, frightened, or bought. Once they know your pattern, they believe they know your future. But every so often, someone appears who completely ruins the equation, not because they possess magical powers, not because they have unlimited wealth or powerful connections, but because they have developed something that is far rarer, mind that refuses to follow the script everyone else accepts without noticing. People like this cannot be handled using ordinary methods because they stopped living by invisible rules long before anyone realized they had. That is when the real panic begins. The biggest mistake manipulative people make is believing that power only belongs to those sitting at the top. They underestimate the quiet individual who sees through appearances, learns from every betrayal, and becomes harder to influence with each passing year. They laugh first, then they investigate, and eventually they become concerned. It is almost like downloading the wrong software update. You thought it would make things easier, and suddenly nothing works anymore. Today's message is not about fantasy or secret handshakes hidden inside dark rooms. It is about the psychological truth behind why certain individuals become impossible to predict, impossible to intimidate, and almost impossible to control. When that happens, every system built on certainty begins experiencing something it was never designed to handle: uncertainty. By the end of this video, you will understand why your greatest strength may not be what you can do, but what no one can make you do anymore. And that discovery is far more unsettling than most people will ever admit. 1. They prepared for someone hungry for power. They never prepared for someone who could not be bought. Most people assume power belongs to whoever has the most money, influence, or authority. But history has repeatedly shown that the strongest systems do not survive by force alone. They survive by making people want what they are offering. They know that if they can tempt you with status, approval, comfort, recognition, or fear of missing out, they rarely have to fight you. You will willingly walk in the direction they have already chosen for you. That is why someone who cannot be bought is so difficult to understand. Being unbuyable does not only mean refusing money. It means refusing to trade your principles for convenience. It means not changing your beliefs because the crowd changed theirs. It means not becoming someone else just because doing so would earn applause. There is a kind of freedom that appears when your values become more important than your rewards. And very few people ever reach it. This kind of person creates confusion because every strategy that usually works suddenly fails. Flattery does not work because they do not depend on praise. Threats do not work because they have already accepted that doing the right thing often comes with a cost. Promises do not work because they are no longer chasing every shiny opportunity placed in front of them. They make decisions based on what they believe is true, not on what feels profitable in the moment. That is when people who rely on influence begin to panic. They realize they are dealing with someone whose choices cannot be purchased, borrowed, manipulated, or negotiated. They can delay that person, criticize them, or misunderstand them. But controlling them becomes another matter entirely. 2. You accidentally became the variable that broke their entire formula. Every system that depends on control has one hidden weakness. It believes people are predictable. It assumes that if enough pressure is applied, you will eventually surrender. If enough praise is given, you will become attached. If enough fear is created, you will stay quiet. Human behavior becomes a formula, and once they think they know the formula, they believe they know the outcome. Then someone comes along who does not fit the pattern. Not because they are trying to be mysterious, but because they stopped making decisions based on what everyone else expects. They do not react just because someone pushes a button. They do not follow a crowd simply because it is moving in one direction. They pause, think, observe, and choose. That small difference changes everything. People who depend on predictable reactions become frustrated when they cannot read you. One day, they expect you to argue, but you stay calm. Another day, they expect you to walk away, but you stand your ground. They think they have finally figured you out, and then you make another decision they never saw coming. Slowly, their confidence begins to crack. Not because you are playing games, but because you are no longer living on autopilot. What makes this even more powerful is that you probably did not plan for it. You were not trying to become anyone's puzzle. You simply grew. Every lesson, every disappointment, every mistake taught you to respond with greater wisdom instead of greater emotion. Without realizing it, you became someone who could not be easily calculated. That is where real influence begins. Not in being unpredictable for the sake of looking clever, but in refusing to let other people's expectations decide your next move. When your choices come from clear thinking instead of emotional pressure, every old formula starts producing the wrong answer. The moment someone realizes their usual methods no longer work on you, they are forced to confront a truth. They rarely admit the problem is not that you changed the game. It is that you stopped playing by rules they assumed everyone would always obey. Before we continue, I want to take a moment to speak to you about this channel and the mission behind it. Every video released here is created with a purpose: to reach people who are growing, awakening, and stepping into a stronger version of themselves. People exactly like you, the chosen one who refuses to be controlled, defined, or limited by the expectations of others. Creating this content takes time, prayer, and deep commitment. If these insights have helped you see yourself and the world around you more clearly, I want to invite you to support this work. Through the link in the pinned comment, you can contribute by buying us a coffee, making a donation, or joining our community as a member. Your support is not just generosity. It is a seed planted into ground that produces fruit for thousands of others who need to hear what you just heard. Proverbs 1:25 says, "A generous person will prosper, and whoever refreshes others will be refreshed." When you invest in this mission, you are helping someone else find the clarity that is changing your life right now. The link is in the pinned comment. Take that step today. 3. You do not destroy lies by fighting them. You destroy them by existing normally. One of the biggest mistakes people make is believing every lie deserves a response. They think truth only wins if it argues louder, explains longer, or fights harder. But that is not how deception usually falls apart. Most lies survive because they keep people emotionally trapped. The more attention they receive, the more alive they become. That is exactly why some of the strongest people refuse to spend their lives chasing every false accusation or correcting every misunderstanding. Instead, they let consistency do the talking. A person who quietly lives by their values becomes incredibly difficult to discredit. They do not need to constantly announce their honesty because their actions build a reputation that words cannot easily erase. While others are busy creating stories, they are creating evidence. Day after day, decision after decision. They leave behind a trail of integrity that eventually becomes impossible to ignore. This is what unsettles people who depend on deception. They expect you to panic. They expect endless arguments, emotional reactions, and desperate attempts to defend yourself. When none of that happens, they lose control of the situation. Their version of events starts collapsing under the weight of your steady behavior. Every calm decision you make quietly exposes the difference between someone who is acting and someone who is simply being themselves. What is remarkable is that truth has a patience that lies do not. A lie usually needs constant maintenance. It needs new excuses, new explanations, new supporters, and new distractions just to stay alive. Truth does not have that burden. It remains the same tomorrow as it was yesterday. It does not need rehearsals because it has nothing to remember. That is why genuine character becomes so powerful over time. People eventually notice who remains consistent when no one is watching. They begin connecting the dots for themselves. The noise fades, the exaggerations lose their effect, and what is real becomes harder to ignore. 4. They mistook your patience for a lack of intelligence. One of the biggest errors people make is underestimating someone who refuses to react immediately. They see calmness and assume weakness. They see someone choosing their words carefully and assume they have nothing to say. They see patience and mistake it for ignorance. But patience is often not the absence of awareness. It is the result of having enough awareness to know that not every situation deserves an immediate response. People who rush to reveal everything about themselves often give away their strategy. They show their emotions, expose their intentions, and allow others to predict their next move. But someone who has learned the power of patience operates differently. They observe first. They gather information. They notice patterns. They allow people to reveal themselves without interruption. This is where many people make a costly mistake. They become comfortable because they believe they are getting away with something. They assume the quiet person is unaware, when in reality, that person may have already noticed the details everyone else missed. Every contradiction, every unusual reaction, and every hidden motive becomes another piece of information being collected. Patience is dangerous to manipulation because manipulation depends on urgency. It needs quick reactions, emotional decisions, and rushed choices. A patient person removes that advantage. They refuse to be pushed into a moment they have not fully understood. They know that timing matters, and sometimes the most intelligent move is waiting until the truth has nowhere left to hide. The world often celebrates the loudest person in the room, but volume has never been the same as wisdom. Some of the most powerful decisions are made by people who spent more time listening than speaking. Eventually, those who underestimated you begin to realize something uncomfortable. You were never unaware. You were simply refusing to reveal everything you knew. 5. Your greatest weapon was never strength. It was the fact that you could not be emotionally scripted. The easiest person to control is not always the weakest person. It is often the person whose emotions can be predicted. When someone knows exactly what will make you angry, afraid, insecure, or desperate, they have found the buttons that influence your decisions. They do not need to force you because they already understand how to guide your reactions. But everything changes when someone can no longer be emotionally controlled. A person who cannot be easily scripted is difficult to manipulate because they create space between what happens and how they respond. They do not allow every insult to become a battle. They do not allow every compliment to become a weakness. They do not let temporary emotions make permanent decisions for them. This does not mean they do not feel deeply. It means they have learned not to hand over the control of their actions to every feeling that appears. That kind of emotional discipline is rare because many people are trained to react before they think. They are encouraged to prove themselves, defend their pride, chase approval, and respond instantly to anything that challenges their identity. A person who breaks that pattern becomes unpredictable in the best way. Manipulation depends on emotional shortcuts. Create fear, and people rush. Create anger, and people lose judgment. Create insecurity, and people start seeking validation. But when someone recognizes these patterns and chooses awareness instead of reaction, those shortcuts stop working. This is what surprises people who are used to controlling situations. They expect a certain response, but they receive thoughtfulness. They expect an emotional explosion, but they meet calm reasoning. They expect someone to chase their approval, but they find someone who is comfortable standing alone. The greatest strength is not having no emotions. It is having emotions and still being the person who decides what happens next. When your mind becomes stronger than the triggers around you, you become much harder to influence because nobody else can easily write the script for your life. I want to pause here for a moment before we go further, because what we are discussing in this video is not just theory. It is a truth that applies to your actual life and your actual journey as a chosen one. This channel was created to deliver insights like these to people who are ready to receive them. People who are done being manipulated, done being underestimated, and done living according to someone else's script. Keeping this mission going requires resources, and your support makes a real difference. If this content has been valuable to you, if something said here today gave you a new perspective or confirmed something you have been sensing for a long time, I want to invite you to give back through the link in the pinned comment. Whether you buy us a coffee, make a donation, or become a monthly member, every contribution helps us create more content that reaches more people who need to wake up to the truth about their own power. Luke 6:38 says, "Give, and it will be given to you. Good measure, pressed down, shaken together, and running over." Your generosity is a seed, and seeds always produce a harvest. The link is in the pinned comment. Take that step now. 6. You turned every attack into new information instead of new trauma. Most people experience pain and immediately focus on what was taken from them. They remember the disappointment, the betrayal, the unfair treatment, or the moment someone tried to bring them down. That reaction is human. But there is another level of growth that happens when a person learns to look beyond the damage and start searching for the lesson hidden inside the experience. This is where you become different. Instead of allowing every negative experience to become a permanent wound, you begin treating it as information. Every difficult person teaches you something about human behavior. Every mistake reveals something about your own choices. Every setback shows you where you need to become wiser, stronger, or more prepared. People who rely on hurting others often expect their actions to create weakness. They expect you to become distracted, defeated, or stuck in the past. What they fail to understand is that some people do not just survive challenges, they study them. They pay attention to what happened, why it happened, and how they can make sure they never repeat the same pattern again. That mindset changes everything. A person who learns from every attack becomes increasingly difficult to manipulate because they are constantly evolving. The same tactic that worked yesterday will not work tomorrow, because they have already examined it, understood it, and grown beyond it. While others repeat the same behaviors, you are becoming a completely different version of yourself. The most powerful transformation happens when pain stops being just pain and becomes wisdom. Not because the experience was easy, but because you refused to let it have the final word. You took something meant to break your confidence and turned it into knowledge that strengthened your awareness. That is what surprises people who underestimated you. They thought they were creating your downfall, but they were actually giving you information that helped you rise. They were showing you the game while you were learning how to play it better. The person who learns from everything becomes a person who is always one step ahead, because every experience becomes another tool in their hands. 7. They realized you learn faster than they adapt. One of the most underestimated forms of power is the ability to grow quickly. Many people believe success comes from never making mistakes. But the reality is that the capable individuals are often the ones who can turn mistakes into lessons faster than others can repeat their strategies. This is what makes you difficult to handle. Someone who depends on the same tactics over and over again eventually becomes predictable. They rely on what worked before, assuming the same approach will continue producing the same result. But they fail to notice that while they are repeating yesterday's methods, you are studying, adjusting, and becoming someone new. Growth creates a problem for anyone who tries to limit you. They may understand who you were, but they struggle to understand who you are becoming. The version of you they prepared for no longer exists. Every challenge forced you to improve your awareness, sharpen your judgment, and recognize patterns you once overlooked. This is why certain people become frustrated when their old methods stop working. They believe they are dealing with the same person, but they are actually facing someone who has learned from every encounter. What once confused you now teaches you. What once hurt you now strengthens your understanding. What once controlled your emotions now becomes something you recognize before it can affect you. The advantage of continuous learning is that it creates momentum. A person who keeps evolving becomes harder to predict because they are never standing still. They are constantly collecting knowledge, improving their decisions, and becoming more prepared for whatever comes next. The difference between someone who remains trapped and someone who breaks through is often not talent or luck. It is the willingness to learn faster than circumstances can defeat them. Eventually, those who underestimated you noticed something important. They were competing against an older version of you. They were using yesterday's information to understand today's person, and by the time they realized the difference, you had already moved forward. 8. The more they studied you, the more they accidentally revealed themselves. People often believe that watching someone closely gives them power over that person. They think that by analyzing your behavior, studying your choices, and looking for your weaknesses, they are gaining an advantage. But what they fail to realize is that observation is never one-sided. The person doing the studying is also revealing who they are through what they choose to notice. What someone focuses on says a lot about them. A person who constantly searches for flaws may reveal their own insecurity. Someone who looks for ways to manipulate may reveal their own desire for control. Someone who assumes the worst about others often exposes the fears and beliefs they carry inside themselves. Without saying a word, people reveal their mindset through the way they interpret the world. This is why some individuals become uncomfortable when they try to analyze someone who is calm and aware. They enter the situation believing they are collecting information, but they unknowingly provide information about themselves. Their questions, reactions, and assumptions begin showing their intentions. The interesting thing about human behavior is that people often reveal more through their patterns than their words. A person can say they support you, but their actions may reveal competition. They can claim they are trying to help, but their behavior may reveal control. Over time, these contradictions become impossible to ignore. The person who pays attention without becoming consumed by emotions gains a unique advantage. They stop focusing only on what people say and start noticing what people repeatedly do. They understand that character is not revealed in one moment, but through consistent patterns. This is why attempts to study you can sometimes backfire. While someone is searching for your weaknesses, you may be learning about their habits, motivations, and limitations. They think they are holding a magnifying glass over your life, but they forget that their own actions are under observation too. 9. Your presence forced hidden agendas into the open. Some people spend years carefully managing how they are perceived. They build an image, choose their words carefully, and create a version of themselves that they believe others will accept. As long as everyone plays along, the mask remains in place. But then someone enters the situation who brings something different: authenticity. Authenticity has a way of creating pressure. When a person is genuine, it changes the atmosphere around them. It becomes harder for others to hide behind fake intentions, because realness naturally highlights what is artificial. This does not happen because the person is trying to expose anyone. It happens because honesty creates a contrast. When something real appears, everything pretending to be real becomes easier to notice. People with hidden agendas often depend on confusion. They rely on mixed messages, carefully chosen words, and situations where nobody looks too closely. But someone who pays attention, asks deeper questions, and refuses to ignore what feels wrong can unintentionally disrupt that entire process. This is why certain people feel uncomfortable around those who are truly self-aware. They cannot easily predict how someone will respond because that person is not trying to impress, manipulate, or gain approval. They are simply being consistent. And consistency is difficult to compete against when someone else is constantly changing depending on the audience. Your presence can reveal things because people naturally adjust when they encounter someone who cannot be easily influenced. Some become more honest, some become defensive, some reveal their true intentions through their reactions. The way people respond to your authenticity often says more about them than it does about you. The interesting part is that you may not even realize this is happening. You are simply living according to your values, while others are forced to confront the difference between what they show and what they actually carry inside. 10. You refuse to become the character they had already written for you. One of the most limiting things people experience is being trapped inside someone else's opinion of who they are. Before they truly understand you, some people create a story about you. They decide what you are capable of, what your weaknesses are, and what role they expect you to play. Once that story is created, they often ignore anything that challenges it. But growth has a way of destroying old narratives. The person they thought they knew may no longer exist. The version of you they judged based on your past mistakes, your struggles, or your quiet moments was only a small part of your journey. They looked at one chapter and assumed they understood the entire book. The problem begins when people become comfortable with a limited version of you. Your improvement can feel like a threat because it forces them to admit they were wrong. If they labeled you as someone who would fail, watching you succeed becomes uncomfortable. If they saw you as someone who needed their approval, watching you become independent changes the entire dynamic. This is why refusing to accept other people's labels is such a powerful act. It means you stop allowing someone else's imagination to become your identity. You understand that people can have opinions about you, but they do not have authority over who you become. The most surprising transformations happen when someone quietly decides to outgrow every expectation placed on them. They do not need to announce their change or convince everyone immediately. Their actions eventually become the evidence. Those who underestimated you are then forced to face a difficult truth. They were not seeing your potential. They were only seeing their own limited understanding of you. A person who refuses to be defined by old judgments becomes incredibly difficult to control. They are no longer living according to the role someone else created for them. They are writing their own story, making their own decisions, and becoming someone that yesterday's opinions cannot explain. Sometimes the greatest victory is not proving people wrong. It is becoming someone they never imagined you could be. 11. You became impossible to corner because you stopped needing to win every battle. Many people believe power comes from always having the last word, proving they are right, or defeating anyone who challenges them. But there is a deeper level of strength that appears when someone no longer feels the need to fight every battle placed in front of them. The moment you stop needing constant victory, you become much harder to control. People who manipulate often rely on pride and ego. They know that if they can make you feel attacked, disrespected, or challenged, they can pull you into a reaction. Suddenly, your attention is no longer on what truly matters. It is focused on proving yourself to someone who may have never intended to understand you in the first place. But when you develop the ability to step back and choose your battles wisely, their strategy loses its power. This does not mean becoming passive or allowing people to treat you unfairly. It means understanding that every conflict does not deserve your energy. Sometimes the strongest decision is refusing to enter a situation designed to drain you. You begin asking yourself whether something is worth your time, your peace, and your focus. That shift changes the way people interact with you. Those who were used to getting emotional reactions from you become confused. They expected anger, desperation, or endless explanations. Instead, they encounter someone who thinks clearly and moves with purpose. The interesting thing is that people who are secure within themselves do not need to win every argument because their identity is not built on being constantly validated. They are not fighting for everyone to agree with them. They are focused on understanding reality and making the best decisions they can. Eventually, those who try to corner you realize there is no easy way to trap someone who is not controlled by their ego. They cannot distract you with unnecessary drama or pull you into endless battles. True power is not having the ability to fight everyone. It is having the wisdom to know when a fight is beneath you and the discipline to protect your energy for what truly matters. 12. Your calm exposed how much of their confidence was actually performance. Some people appear powerful because they know how to create a reaction. They speak loudly, intimidate others, demand attention, or create situations where people feel pressured to respond emotionally. Their confidence seems convincing because it is constantly being reinforced by the reactions they receive from others. But remove the reaction and something interesting happens. A person who is truly confident does not need constant proof of their influence. They remain steady whether they are praised or criticized. Their confidence comes from within, not from controlling the emotions of everyone around them. But for someone whose confidence is built on dominance, attention, or fear, another person's calmness can feel strangely threatening. This is because calmness removes the stage they were performing on. When someone refuses to become angry, defensive, or desperate to prove themselves, the usual methods of control begin to fail. The person trying to create a reaction suddenly has nothing to work with. Their words may become louder, their tactics may become more obvious, but the power they thought they had starts disappearing. The surprising thing is that calmness is often misunderstood. Some people mistake it for weakness because they are used to measuring strength by aggression. They do not realize that staying composed in a difficult situation requires a level of self-control that many people never develop. A calm person is not necessarily someone who has nothing to say. They may simply understand that not every challenge deserves their energy. They recognize that losing control of their emotions gives other people control over their decisions. This is why certain individuals become uncomfortable around someone who remains grounded. They cannot easily predict them, provoke them, or pull them into unnecessary chaos. The confidence that depended on getting a reaction begins to fade. 13. They realized you could walk away from things they would sacrifice everything to keep. One of the hardest things for people to understand is someone who is not controlled by attachment. Many people spend their lives protecting certain things at all costs: approval, status, relationships, titles, comfort, and the image they have built in the eyes of others. These things become so important that losing them feels impossible. But there is a different kind of strength that appears when a person understands that their identity is bigger than what they possess. Someone who can walk away from what no longer aligns with their values becomes incredibly difficult to control. They cannot be easily pressured with the fear of rejection. They cannot be easily trapped by empty promises. They cannot be convinced to betray themselves just to keep something that was never truly meant for them. This mindset often surprises people because many systems of influence depend on attachment. If someone knows what you desperately want to keep, they know where to apply pressure. But when you reach a point where your peace, integrity, and self-respect matter more than temporary rewards, those pressure points begin disappearing. This does not mean you stop caring. It means you stop allowing fear of loss to make your decisions for you. You understand that some opportunities come with hidden costs, and some relationships require you to become smaller just to remain accepted. People who depend on control find this difficult to understand because they believe everyone can be persuaded if the offer is attractive enough. Then they encounter someone who values freedom more than comfort, and their usual methods suddenly become ineffective. The most powerful people are not always those who have the most to gain. Sometimes they are the ones who have nothing they are willing to sacrifice their character for. When you no longer need something badly enough to abandon yourself, you become free in a way that cannot be easily taken away, and that freedom is unsettling to anyone who has built their influence around controlling what others fear losing. 14. The greatest discovery was not that you were stronger than them. It was that their power had always depended on your belief in it. For a long time, many people give away more power than they realize. Not because they are weak, but because they accept certain things as impossible to challenge. They assume some people are untouchable, some systems cannot be questioned, and some voices automatically matter more than their own. The moment those beliefs take root, control becomes much easier, because the strongest prison is often the one built inside the mind. Then something changes. A person begins to see clearly. They start noticing patterns, questioning assumptions, and realizing that much of what seemed powerful was actually supported by perception. The fear was real, but the image behind the fear was often much larger than the reality itself. This is a difficult truth for anyone who depends on influence. Their greatest advantage was never just their position, their reputation, or their resources. Their greatest advantage was people believing they had no choice but to obey, accept, or remain silent. Once that belief disappears, the entire dynamic changes. This is why awareness is so powerful. When you understand how something works, it becomes harder for it to control you. You stop reacting from fear and start making decisions from understanding. You begin seeing situations as they are, not as they were presented to you. The surprising part is that the person who changes the most may not be the person trying to control the situation. It may be the person who finally realizes they were more capable than they ever believed. True power is not about making others feel powerless. It is about reclaiming your own ability to think, choose, and act without being trapped by fear or false limitations. The biggest shift happens when you stop asking for permission to become who you are capable of becoming. At that moment, anyone who relied on your doubt loses their greatest advantage. Because the moment you stop giving fear authority over your life, you discover something that was there all along. The power you were searching for was never completely outside of you. It was waiting for you to recognize it. Throughout this journey, one powerful truth has been revealed. The greatest threat to any form of manipulation is not someone who fights harder, but someone who becomes impossible to control. The person who cannot be bought, emotionally scripted, distracted, or defined by someone else's expectations, becomes a force that cannot easily be predicted, not because they are trying to prove they are better than anyone else, but because they have learned something many people spend years discovering. The strongest form of power begins with mastering yourself. You learn that patience is not weakness, calmness is not surrender, walking away is not defeat. Growth is not about becoming someone people fear. It is about becoming someone who no longer lives according to fear. The moment you stop allowing outside forces to decide your worth, your choices, and your direction, everything changes. You become more aware, you become more intentional. You begin recognizing patterns that once controlled you, and you develop the wisdom to respond instead of simply react. What makes a person truly powerful is not having the ability to dominate others. It is having the discipline to remain authentic when the world pressures you to become something you are not. It is having the courage to stand alone when necessary, the intelligence to learn from every experience, and the strength to keep evolving beyond every limitation placed in your path. Sometimes people underestimate those who are quiet, patient, and observant because they mistake peace for weakness. But time has a way of revealing the difference between someone who is pretending to be strong and someone who has genuinely built strength from within. The greatest victory is not proving everyone wrong. The greatest victory is becoming so grounded in who you are that their opinions no longer determine your future. If this message gave you a new perspective, inspired you, or made you see power and influence differently, make sure you subscribe to the channel for more deep insights like this. Do not forget to like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and leave your thoughts in the comments because your perspective matters. And before you go, if this channel has added value to your life, if these insights have helped you see yourself more clearly, understand the world around you more deeply, or step into the strength that was always inside you, I want to invite you to support this mission one final time. Through the link in the pinned comment, you can buy us a coffee, make a donation, or join our community as a member. This work does not run itself. It is sustained by people who believe in it enough to invest in it. And what you sow into ground like this does not disappear. It grows into content that reaches the next chosen one who is still in the middle of being underestimated, still in the middle of being manipulated, still waiting to hear that their quiet strength is actually their greatest power. Be the reason they find it. The link is in the pinned comment. Thank you for watching, and remember, keep learning, keep growing, and never surrender the power of your own mind. God bless you.